Hello everyone. We are in MOOC Swayam course on nationalism and constitutional growth in India, 1858 to 1920. Friends, we have been trying to understand nationalism and constitutional growth, uh, starting from establishment of East India Company and the constitutional consolidation of East India Company and then direct control by the British government by 1858. And since then, we have been getting so many Charter Act from the Parliament of England and ultimately culminating into fruition of Constitution of India in 1949 through Constituent Assembly, uh, which was the sort of people's conscience on the move to frame the Constitution of India in 1949. As in many of the segments I have discussed upon, one of the things which I have highlighted, which is excluded from the mainstream political science discourse, and especially within even the understanding of the journey of constitution. The nationalist kind of question which was raised by the peasant class, tribal movements, and also working class movements. How working class contributed in the nationalist movement. So we'll be focusing on two lectures, particularly on working class and the national movement, to understand that they how workers are not different from people in general, or workers are not even any way different from the peasant class, but yet they are categorized as workers because they are part of the production mechanism in the factories, particularly by using machine and producing something which has a certain kind of purchasing price. So that lot of people basically organizing themselves to participate in the freedom struggle. So before the Indian nationalist intelligentsia began to associate itself with the working class agitations towards the end of the 19th century, there were several agitations, including strikes by workers and in the textile mills of Bombay, Calcutta, Ahmedabad, Surat, Wardha, Madras, Coimbatore, and so on, in the railways and in the plantations. However, they were mostly sporadic, spontaneous, and unorganized, revolts based on immediate economic, grievances, and had hardly any wider political implications. There were also uh, some early attempts at organized efforts to improve the condition of the workers. These efforts were made as early as the 1870s by philanthropists. In 1878, Shorabji Shapurji Bengali tried unsuccessfully to introduce a bill in the Bombay Legislative Council to limit the working hours of labor. Now, mind it, the international movements are already in the international arena about reduction of working hours for workers and labor class. throughout the world, and especially in Europe. There's a very concerted effort led by socialists of the time, and workers used to work for 12 hours. In European societies, but gradually that reduced to 10 hours, then 8 hours, and then, of course, by the effort of the International Labour Organization, it got reduced to 8 hours to 6 hours. So that kind of movements, were also sort of taking root in India, and ultimately the unsuccessful though the introduction of the bill in the Bombay Legislative Council. Also, in Bengal, we see Sasipada Banerjee, Brahmo social reformer, setting up a working men's club in 1870, and brought out a monthly journal called Bharat, Sramjeevi. Now, Sramjeevi basically, are those people who are doing labor, right, or those whose livelihood is based on labor. So that can be translated as an Indian labor. That was a journal. The primary idea of that was to educate the workers. In Bombay, Narayan Meghaji Lokhande brought out an Anglo-Marathi weekly called Deen Bandhu, Friend of the Poor, in 1880, and started the Bombay and Mill Hands Association in 1890. So what we are seeing, that the already very consciousness about working class moment, or the kind of working class requiring certain kind of efforts by the intelligentsia, so that their the misery, the economic grievances, and all those things can be addressed in immediate way possible, so that their life will be enhanced. So moving ahead, there is this emergence of modern worker in 19th century, and this modern worker also emerges in India in the second half of the 19th century, with the growth of modern industry, railways and telegraph networks. Now, railways itself was, when railways got started in mid of the 50s, and then on, that what we witness, that railway becomes the large chunk of the industry of India, and also telegraph network. So people working in telegraph, and also modern industry, as we already saw that how this modern industry was critiqued by the early nationalist leaders, because that was destroying the handicrafts and artifacts and domestic sort of industries, low scale industries. But now this modern industry was catering the needs of the British government. So many of the leaders critiqued the modern industry, but nevertheless, the modern industry employed workers who worked in these industries, so that the manufacturing and the production can be increased, and that can have a wide reach of the market. Also, this growth of the Indian working class, and that is intertwined with the development of the national movement. So, in a way, many of the leaders of the Indian National Congress are also coming out from the trade unions of those, uh, those factories or those industries. In a way, the very idea of national movement and also parallel the issue of working class, that kind of intersects. So what we also see that early workers agitation, in the late 19th century, what we see that there's a sporadic strikes occurred in textile mills, railways and plantations, because ultimately modern industry in India was heavily the textile industry. There's a telegraph, railways, plantations. Of course, these things were there. Plantations were also because the British government was employing, you know, workers. The British government was employing workers who were kind of engaged into plantation, and especially tea plantation in Assam, in Ceylon, Kerala, in other parts of Western Ghats, where British government was engaged into tea plantation. So workers, of course, were working day and night for production of tea. So what we see that there's a agitation. The workers had grievances and they had agitation. They were primarily based on immediate economic grievances, which lacked organization and had limited political implications. Also, there were a lot of philanthropic efforts in the 1870s, which aimed at improving worker conditions, which were not part of an organized movement, but nevertheless, these efforts were for the improvement of the conditions of the workers. And what were these early philanthropic efforts? If we see, like as I mentioned, the Sorabji, Sapoji Bengali, Sasipada Banerjee, or Lokhande, they made early efforts to improve workers' conditions. These efforts, while philanthropic, did not represent the beginnings of an organized working class movement. Now, philanthropists were not part of the mainstream nationalist movement at this stage, but nevertheless, later part of these efforts, and also workers' union leaders, they gradually became part of the nationalist movement, and also leaders of the Indian National Congress by 1885 onwards. Now, there's nationalist movements, initial attitude, where early nationalists they paid little attention to worker issue. Like when I was talking about the issues of peasants, how with three examples of the peasant movements, particularly UP Kisan Sabha, Eka movements, Mapila revolt or rebellion, and also Bardoli. UP Kisan Sabha, or even some of the questions prior to that, were not really taken care of. Ultimately, because of the talukdars and landlords, or small landlords, who were kind of also part of the Indian National Congress leadership, and they were leading the nationalist movement because they were the backbone of the organization financially. So any kind of raising of the peasants question would be very detrimental to the those landlords or landowners, and that would culminate into sort of seizing of the entire nationalist movement. So it was rather the Indian National Congress or nationalist leaders balancing, kind of peasant question with the landlords and landowners questions. Similarly, uh, the early nationalists, their focus was on the broader anti-imperialist movement than workers' movements or peasant movements. And because of this differential attitude towards workers in European and Indian enterprises, there was certain kind of desire to avoid divisions within the anti-imperialist movement, influenced the stance towards workers. But what we see that there is a shift in nationalist stance in the late 19th century. By 1890s, 1895, nationalist movement in fact gained strength, and their ideological trends were also towards the labor's rights and workers' rights. So hence their orientation emerged as a pro-labor, and then they led the efforts which meant to organize labor without weakening the anti-imperialist United Front. So so in a way, this entire collaboration of the working class plus also anti-imperialist United Front, that gave kind of again a very good combination. And there was this opposition to government legislation, ultimately emphasizing on securing concessions for all classes. So in a way, uh, you know the, this shift was very crucial, very important for the betterment of the lives of many of the workers who were employed in different industries. Now, what we also see by the late 19th century is a labor legislation opposition. Nationalists initially opposed government legislation to regulate working conditions, including the Factories Act of 1881 and 1891. But what we see that there is reluctance due to concerns about British manufacturing interests, hindrance to rapid industrialization, and also fear of impeding economic progress. Further, what we see that there is support for Indian labor in British-owned enterprises, where nationalists, they supported Indian labor in British-owned enterprises, aligning against perceived exploitation by foreign capitalists. So now, by the late 19th century, this understanding that this foreign capitalists, their main motive, their purpose is to generate surplus value and profit making, without addressing the question of very harsh conditions in which the workers live. Nationalists, on the other hand, they started supporting all sort of the Indian laborers, where these enterprises were exploiting, and they led campaigns against the exploitation of tea plantation workers in Assam, particularly, which marked by nationalist newspapers. And we have deliberated on that how media or newspapers, vernacular newspapers particularly, started raising the sufferings of many of the marginalized communities, including workers, peasants, tribes. So that those pressing questions can be addressed in immediate manners. Now, there's a very huge kind of strike led by the signalers. Now, signalers are those people, those workers who give signal to the railways. Without giving even manual signal, it is impossible for railways to function. And by the time the railway was based on steam engine, and that required kind of proper signaling so that they would be able to smoothly kind of able to transfer the resources as well as people and passengers. So this was perhaps the first organized strike by the working class, which occurred in the Great Indian Peninsula Railway in May 1899. Nationalist newspapers, again, including Tilak's Maharatna and Kesari, supported the strike, uh, turning it into a national issue because that became widely popularized. That the Great Indian Peninsula Railway has stopped functioning because of the strike led by signalers. And then what we also see that there's a new tendencies in early 20th century, where earlier 20th century sees a shift in nationalist intelligentsia's attitude. Uh, Bipin Chandrapal and G. Subramanya Iyer, they advocated this legislation to protect workers against powerful capitalists, because capitalists were exploitative and they wanted to exploit the labor for their own benefit. But the advocacy led by Bipin Chandrapal and Subramanya Iyer, there's this emergence of the idea that workers should organize themselves into unions for their rights. So the very idea of trade unions, or kind of collectivity or organization, so that it should be a right of the workers to be participate in the unions, so that they will be able to provide leadership to the union, but also they will be able to raise their questions and grievances, so that that can be having a kind of negotiating approach with the owner of the factory and the workers, or so that there will be smooth functioning, and also the rights of the workers will be protected. So there's a growing working class in the early 20th century. We see these nationalist leaders like Bipin Chandrapal and Subramanyam Iyer advocating for legislation to protect workers and the need for unionization. And this is also the beginning of a shift towards recognizing and addressing workers' rights within the nationalist movement. We also see now there's a Swadeshi upsurge by 1903-1908, and I have focused on Swadeshi and boycott in one of the lecture, where we understood by that time also that how this Swadeshi movement had to do something with the not only partition of Bengal, but also that's a time which in a way was the prime time of the organization of the nationalist movement. We see there's a partition of nationalist movement into two blocks called extremists and moderates, and how these extremists and moderates are pitting against each other, but also they are kind of their main aim or the purpose is to fight against the operation of British government. uh, you know, and to the very backbone of the British economy was India. The very backbone of the British economy was India, because much of the refined products from the British factories were getting sold into the Indian market, and of course, on a high price, and that was leading to inflation and also impoverishment of the Indian people. So then the very self-reliance idea, or produce and consume organically in your own country, and all small scale industries should be revived, so that we'll not be relying on the foreign products. Rather, we'll be able to produce ourselves, right? So this is the time where we see that there's a distinct landmark in labor movement history, marked by the rise of the professional agitator and the power of labor organization. Swadeshi leaders, they actively involved in organizing stable trade unions, strikes, legal aid, and fund collection. The this entire unionist movement also got to see that people like Aswini Kumar Banerjee, Prabhat Kumar Roy Chaudhary, Premtosh Bose, and Apurva Kumar Ghosh, all these leaders emerging as a notable leader who are standing for the cause of the workers, rights. And also they got support from leaders like Bipin Chandra Pal, Chitranjan Das, Liaquat Hussain. All these leaders, they actually supported the cause of the workers. And we see that there's a shift to political engagement during the Swadesi period. We see a shift to political engagement during the Swadeshi period. The shift uh, was from purely economic agitations to worker involvement in wider political issues during the Swadeshi period. Workers engaged in political movements demonstrated during the 1905 Bengal partition, demonstrating unity against colonial policies. There's a beginning of socialist tinge among some radical nationalist leaders influenced by Marxist and social democratic forces in Europe, especially people like M. N. Roy, and also young leaders like Jawaharlal Nehru, who were into that socialist leading people who were very much influenced by the forces in Europe who were organizing protests based on the Marxist ideas. Uh, and then what we see is the post Swadeshi decline by 1908 onwards. There's a decline in the labor movement after 1908, following the waning of the nationalist mass upsurge, and the Swadeshi movement gradually declines. Swadeshi movement gradually declines, and there's an emergence of the new questions, like the separate electorate question and many other questions which leads to home rule formation of home rule league and also the Lucknow Pact further on. So there's there's a brief silence, from 1908 to almost 19, 11, 12, and then again the momentum of the nationalist movement is picking up. And also labor movement eclipsed until the next nationalist upsurge in the immediate post-World War One years by 1918, 1919. So there are almost a decade of silence on this question because many other questions became very prominent. So I'll stop here with this, and I hope that you are able to understand some of the important points related with the questions of the workers in relation to the Indian national movement and how the Indian National Congress leadership is addressing those questions by asking for workers' rights to unionize, having a right to gather for the or the trade union, so that workers can have a readdressal of their questions, and then they'll be able to kind of having a greater rights in terms of not only production, but also the wages, for an example, or their working conditions, for an example, or leisure time, for an example, or lunch hours, for an example, or many other kind of issues of pension, and also the other benefits, or over hour working times benefits. All those questions they can put forth, and then trade union negotiating with the factory owners would ultimately benefit to them. So, thank you so much. We will now switch to another lecture on working class movements. And then we'll see that how some of the agitations gets culminated into larger support base for workers' rights, but also workers time to time are calling for boycott, ultimately leading to a strengthening of the nationalist movements.